Welcome to this laboratory safety orientation video. Laboratory safety is of paramount importance, and that is exactly why the safety resources have been developed to encourage and promote safe and efficient working practices in every laboratory. Working in laboratories poses potential risks and threats. Therefore, there is always an instructor present to offer guidance and assistance.
The instructor's responsibility is to ensure a safe working environment in the laboratory. The instructor is the first port of call for all problems and questions, and the instructor's instructions must be followed at all times. Before work in the laboratory can begin, the laboratory instructor demonstrates the techniques and laboratory equipment to be utilized. Furthermore, the instructor will discuss the Material Safety Data Sheet, MSDS, that conveys information about the associated hazards of chemicals. The instructor will also ensure that the MSDS is up to date and accessible to students at all times.
Although each laboratory is governed by its own specific rules and regulations, some of the fundamental safety rules are in common. In this video, you will be exposed to general laboratory safety and the basic safety principles that apply across the board. Personal protective equipment, commonly known as PPE, is one of the principal ways of protecting you from harm when you work in the laboratory. You must comprehend why your instructor requires you to use PPE.
PPE includes items designed to protect specific areas of your body, such as your eyes and hands. The equipment commonly includes gloves, eye protection, and laboratory coats. PPE is used to eliminate or minimize exposure to some hazards encountered when working in the laboratory.
Do not depend solely on PPE to protect you because it is often the final barrier between you and exposure. PPE should be taken off before proceeding outside the laboratory. Clothing worn in the laboratory should offer you skin-basic protection from splashes and spills. Dress appropriately for the laboratory work. Thob and ghitra are not allowed.
Before entering the laboratory, you must always wear long pants and proper closed-toe shoes. Shorts and sandals leave skin exposed to possible burns and other injuries. Therefore, they are not allowed.
Loose hair can be hazardous while in the lab, as it could impede your vision, accidentally dip into chemicals, get caught in equipment, or even catch fire. Hence, keep your hair tied back. Jewelry can be damaged by chemical gases and spills. Chemical seepage between the jewelry and the skin can put corrosives in intimate contact with your skin and trap the chemicals there. It can also catch on equipment, causing injuries. Therefore, make sure to remove all jewelry before entering the lab.
Everyone in the laboratory, including visitors, must wear lab coats at all times. Lab coats should cover the entire upper body, extend to the knees, and fit comfortably without hanging loosely from the arms. The lab coat must be kept fastened when worn. Snap closures are preferred over buttons or zippers to allow quick removal in case of an emergency.
Furthermore, remember not to wear it in clean spaces such as offices. A lab coat must be washed separately on a regular basis. Safety goggles must have integral side protection to protect against splashes. If you wear corrective lenses for your vision, please note that contact lenses are not suitable. They do not provide any eye protection and must not be worn in our laboratories.
Prescription glasses are not suitable for safety glasses and must be covered with over-safety goggles.
Gloves are an important part of personal protection. Your instructor will assess the risks of hazards, which will require the use of gloves when appropriate, and will offer the appropriate type of gloves.
Glove material must be selected based on the chemicals being used. Always check your gloves before each use to ensure the absence of cracks and small holes.
Disposable gloves and gloves that have been permeated by a chemical must not be reused. These gloves cannot be reused safely because the chemical cannot be totally removed. Contaminated gloves may be recognized as hazardous waste material, but that is not always the case. In all instances, dispose your used gloves in the designated hazardous waste container or as directed by your instructor. The laboratory can offer diverse opportunities for learning, but while working in the laboratory, you should remain alert to your actions and the actions of those around you.
No horseplay will be tolerated. Never consume and/or store food or beverages or apply cosmetics in the laboratory.
Variations in procedure, including changes in the chemicals to be used or in the amounts that will be used, may be dangerous. Alterations should be made only with the approval of your instructor. It is essential to comprehend the safety signs and their meanings. You might see some of these signs around the building. Every chemical compound is labeled with its danger pictogram. They advise the chemist about the danger of the material. There are 9 various general health and safety pictograms altogether. In the laboratory and elsewhere, keeping things clean and neat leads to a safer environment.
Keep walkways and access to safety equipment free of obstructions. Avoid slipping hazards by keeping the floor clear of trailing cables or spilled liquids. Inspect any glassware of cracks or broken edges before use. Inform your instructor immediately if the glass is broken or chemicals are spilled. Broken glassware should always be disposed of in a broken glass disposal container and never in an ordinary trash can. Wipe your bench area before leaving the laboratory to ensure others will not inadvertently touch chemical residue.
Proper labeling on chemicals is essential. Numerous adverse incidents can be tied back to improper or insufficient labeling of chemical containers. Labels are typically referred to as manufacturer and secondary. It is necessary that a manufacturer label is never altered, covered, or otherwise changed until the container is verified as being empty.
Typically, empty containers will be reused. Before a container is reused for another chemical, the obsolete label should be removed completely and the container must be thoroughly washed and allowed to dry. It is unacceptable to use a marker to write over an existing manufacturer label. A secondary label for temporary use must have the name of the chemical, the name of the person who filled the container, and the date it was filled, and the hazards. Clean your dirty glassware at the laboratory sink using hot water, environmentally acceptable cleaning agents, and brushes of suitable stiffness and sizes. Do not force a brush into glassware. Always wear goggles while washing glassware, and wear gloves if instructed to do so.
Proper handling of waste chemicals is a critical element of incident prevention, and there are very strict rules for disposing of chemicals. Improper disposal can result in serious damage to the environment. Every student is responsible for ensuring that these wastes are handled in a manner that minimizes personal hazard and recognizes the potential for environmental contamination. Your instructor will direct you to use designated labeled waste containers. Most likely, different containers will be utilized for different classes of chemicals. Handle your waste materials in the specific ways designated by your instructor. Pouring waste into the wrong container could result in unexpected adverse reactions, leading to fires or explosions. Ensure to pay attention and follow instructions.
Some general disposal guidelines are as follows. When disposing of chemicals, put each class of waste chemical into its specifically labeled disposal container. Carefully read the contents label and close the cap after use. Never put chemicals into a sink or down the drain unless your instructor conveys so. Put ordinary waste paper into a waste paper basket separate from chemical wastes. Keep your hands away from your face, eyes, and mouth while handling chemicals. To avoid an unintentional spread of chemicals, remove your gloves before leaving the work area and handling any doorknobs, keyboards, cell phones, or elevator buttons. After removing your gloves, wash your hands with soap before exiting the laboratory.
Please inform your instructor if you have any chronic diseases such as epilepsy. The utilization of power sockets should be avoided. In case their use is unavoidable, a safety officer must be contacted to verify the quality of the sockets. Unapproved plugs and unauthorized power sockets are never allowed to be used. All power sockets must be secured and kept away from walkways. Never overload power socket outlets. Do not use electrical cables that have damaged wiring or damaged insulation. And always remember to switch off appliances after use. Do not bring any electrical equipment from home to the college, and always seek help from the college maintenance team. Please remember that water and electrical items do not mix. Keep all liquids away from electrical equipment and any source of electrical power. Construction of electrical circuits or electrical modifications of any kind are not permitted.
Working with ionizing radiation and radioactive compounds requires special instructions by the instructor with the collaboration of the Radiation Safety Officer, RSO. Such work must be only performed at specially designated workplaces that only authorized personnel can enter. Most of the machines that use radiation have warning signs and warning lights alerting you of the danger. The equipment may only be used with permission and only after being briefed by the lab instructor. Fully protected equipment ensures that nobody comes into contact with radiation. For work with radiation, a personal dosimeter device must be worn. The device does not provide protection and is primarily used to estimate the radiation dose deposited in an individual wearing the device.
To get a dosimeter, contact the college safety officer.
While some laboratories now pipe gases in from a central storage location, many labs continue to use compressed gas cylinders to store and distribute the gases. There are special regulations governing the utilization of compressed gas cylinders. Cylinders should be located away from any sources of flames or sparks. Strap or chain them to benches or walls so they would not fall. Empty cylinders should be clearly marked and stored separately. Always screw a cap on top of the cylinder to protect the main valve while transporting. Gas cylinders may only be transported on a gas cylinder trolley.
You can only keep the number of cylinders you're going to use. Never use a laboratory as a storage area for cylinders. Although the laboratory is designated to be a place of learning and skill development, it is essential to prepare to respond appropriately to unexpected events. Even when recognized hazards are appropriately managed, incidents may occur. It is likely that your instructor will be the first to respond to a laboratory incident. However, your instructor may be momentarily away, working with another student, or farther away from the incident, and you must respond quickly. While preparing to respond to an emergency, remember that the primary goal is to protect human life and minimize injury. Never put yourself in danger.
In laboratories, the most common emergencies that you may need to respond to involve fires, spills, cuts and burns. As you begin to think about how you might respond to an emergency, take a moment to look around the laboratory when you first enter to identify safety equipment. Locate exits, eye wash fountains, safety showers, fire blankets, first aid kits, and fire extinguishers. Practice walking to them. If your laboratory is equipped with more than one of these items, note the location of those closest to you. Some of this safety equipment, such as fire extinguishers, is tested periodically and will have a tag including the date that testing is due.
Generally, the emergency procedure that you may need to follow will depend on the type of immediate danger and injury sustained, but may include elements of the following steps. Determine whether you and others need to leave the area immediately or whether there is something you can safely consider to minimize injury and damage.
Report the nature and location of the emergency to your instructor, or if necessary, call 999. Be prepared to answer questions from the dispatcher, such as your name, the location, and the nature of the incident.
Do not move injured individuals unless they are in immediate danger from chemical exposure or fire. Keep them warm. Unnecessary movement can severely complicate neck injuries and fractures. Consider the three components of the fire triangle: heat, fuel, and oxygen. All three components must be present for a fire to begin and continue. Removing one of these components will prevent the fire. If a fire unexpectedly occurs, it could be that a quick response on your part will prevent a small incident from transforming into a bigger one. You must decide whether you should fight the fire or flee to safety, but always follow the directions of your instructor. If you decide to try to put out the fire, you will want to be confident that your actions will not spread the fire or put yourself or others in more danger. The best method of extinguishing a small laboratory fire is to smother it. Consider taking the following steps only if you are confident that you can do so.
Remove the heat source by turning off the gas supply to a Bunsen burner or unplugging the electric heater. A fire contained in a small vessel often can be suffocated by limiting the air oxygen. Never use dry towels or cloths to cover the fire because these will burn to add fuel. You can use a wetted material if available.
If the steps listed above are not practical or do not extinguish the fire, a fire extinguisher may be used. Follow these steps to properly use a fire extinguisher. Pull the pin, aim at the base of the fire, squeeze the lever, sweep side to side.
Position yourself between the fire and an escape route and fight the fire from this position to be sure that you can escape. If the fire is burning over an area too large for the fire to be extinguished quickly, then pull the fire alarm. The assigned fire wardens will ask everyone to evacuate the building and go to the assembly point. If someone's clothing catches on fire, the person involved may instinctively run. Running will make the situation worse by fanning the flames, and the heat and the gaseous product of the combustion is likely to be inhaled by someone who is standing, walking, or running.
If someone's clothing or hair catches fire, do not panic. Remember the techniques of stop, drop, and roll. Assist each other with fire blankets if possible.
Remove the fire blanket by pulling down sharply on the tabs hanging from the bottom of the package. Open the blanket fully. Ensure the blanket protects your hands and wrap the blanket around the person to seal off air from the fire. After the person is wrapped in the fire blanket, instruct him to stop, drop, and roll until the fire is suffocated.
After the situation is cleared, get medical attention by calling 999. The range and quantity of hazardous substances used in laboratories require prior planning to respond safely in case of direct contact with the chemicals.
For a small liquid spill or splash that affects only a small area of skin, you should immediately flush the skin with flowing water for at least 15 minutes or 30 minutes for bases. After the initial rinse with water, wash the entire area of the affected skin with warm water and soap.
You or a fellow student should notify your instructor as soon as possible. After rinsing your skin, check the MSDS to see whether any delayed effects should be expected. It is advisable to seek medical attention for even minor chemical burns.
If your skin or clothing is contaminated with larger spills of a liquid, you may have more serious consequences. You should go to the nearest safety shower immediately, turn on the shower, and quickly step under the water spray. While you are under the flowing water, remove all of the contaminated clothing and shoes. You should flood the affected area with water for at least 15 minutes.
Notify your instructor as soon as possible. After thoroughly flushing the area with water, seek medical attention. If possible, your instructor will take the MSDS to the medical facility, but it is helpful if you can identify the name of the chemical.
If you are splashed in the eye with chemicals, go quickly to the nearest eye wash station and flush the eye for at least 15 minutes, 30 minutes for bases. You should use your thumb and forefinger to hold your eyelids away from the eyeball and move your eye continuously, up and down and sideways, to flush the area behind the eyelid.
Your instructor should be notified as soon as possible. After flushing the affected eye, seek medical attention. If possible, identify the chemical contaminant to ensure that your instructor can take a copy of the MSDS to the medical facility.
Labs rely on glass pipettes, beakers, and other containers, and if they break, they can lead to cuts. If you are with someone who has a minor cut, these steps must be ensured. Apply pressure to the wound with sterile gauze. Wash with soap and water. Apply a sterile bandage.
For a more serious cut, have the person sit down and raise the bleeding part while adding pressure. Continue to add pressure while transporting them to urgent care or emergency room. If the bleeding is severe or the person feels faint or lightheaded, call 999. Chemical spills are probably the most common laboratory incidents. Good housekeeping habits will help you avoid spilling chemicals.
Keep laboratory items well away from the edge of your laboratory bench or another workplace. Walk slowly and carefully in the laboratory. Rushing may cause you to bump into other students or into cabinets and laboratory furnishings. If you or someone near your workplace has a chemical spill, you and other students in the area should move away from the spill. If a flammable liquid is spilled, warn other students in the area to extinguish all flames and turn off electrical equipment, if you can do so without putting yourself in harm's way. If the spill occurs in a chemical hood, close the hood sash to allow the vapors to be removed more effectively.
You should report the spill to your instructor immediately. Your instructor should know how to handle the spill. If a significant amount of flammable, toxic, or volatile material is spilled, it may be necessary to vacate the entire laboratory or building.
If a small spill of a liquid material occurs, your instructor may direct you or others to use this spill kit. Before you deal with a chemical spill, make sure your hands and eyes are protected by wearing gloves and goggles. Firstly, take note of the direction in which the spill is flowing to establish the correct position of the absorbent pads. Spread the pads out in a semicircle to contain the spill. The pads work as a dam wall. It is essential to containing the spill immediately. Apply layers of mats over the spill to effectively cover it. The mats will absorb the liquid spill. Once the mats have absorbed the spill, utilize other mats to clean up the residue. The used mats and pads must be disposed of in the plastic bag that comes with the spill kit. Place a label on the bag and send it to the waste chemical storage area.
All incidents must be reported immediately. The incident reporting will determine the follow-up required, if any. You must not make a guess as to whether the issue or incident is worthy of an incident report. When in doubt, file an incident report. So, what are the steps in making a safety incident report? Firstly, report the incident to your instructor. Secondly, make an online report via the CPG website. Instant reporting will enable CPG safety team to be aware of the incident, thus carrying out an investigation to determine both the immediate and root causes. Necessary control measures will then be applied. This will help ensure that any similar incident can be prevented.
Working in a laboratory is always potentially dangerous. However, you should not be afraid, but work with concentration and the necessary respect for chemistry. Follow these simple laboratory rules, and you will greatly reduce the risk of hurting yourself or someone else.